LaserDude99, hero of the future, wants you to join his army. Watch him jump into action. Ready for anything, our hero darts in that direction. Look as he's kind to the animals of all sorts. He gives them his thumbs up. Watch as this marvel mighty man climbs this great tree. He will climb to the very top of the tree. Well, I guess he will. There he goes. Oh, no, he fell again. And, now watch as this marvel climbs to the top of the tree. Up the legs go. There he goes. And I guess he's done. I guess that's as far as he really wanted to go. But wasn't that incredible, folks? LaserDude99, hero of the future, today! Oh, and I guess he slipped there.
The laser is 'cause I like sci-fi. The dude is 'cause I am a rad guy. 99 is 'cause I like Wayne Gretzky. That's why I'm LaserDude99. Laser time and we're gonna do a review. Yes, we're gonna review. Let's talk about movies and comics too. Let's all go watch the review. Hey everybody, I'm LaserDude99. Welcome to another LaserDude99 review. Today's review, we are finally going to be looking at DC New Frontier. Now, this was a request made by Connor Spencer N, and this is his reward he gets for making my Arkham Week banner, which was a great job. He did a great job with it, and he really deserves it. And I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to finally get these comics and review them, but we'll get into that as the review goes on. So let's dive into the review of the graphic novels DC New Frontier Volume 1 and 2, written by Darwin Cook. So let me just say that right off the bat, the first time I ever heard of this story actually wasn't from the comics. It was from the animated movie that DC did based on this, called Justice League New Frontier. In fact, it took me a while to actually find these books when I bought them online, because they kept on typing Justice League New Frontier, and all that came up was this movie. I'm like, no, I already own the movie. I want to find the comic books. It wasn't until later I found out, oh, it's called DC The New Frontier. Which, okay, that makes more sense. When I was curious at first of why they called it Justice League here and DC here, why did they call it just DC? Until I started reading the story and realizing that there was a whole lot more than just the Justice League in these stories. This is Darwin Cook's love letter to the Silver Age, because we got all these different stuff that we have our regular Justice League characters, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, Martian Manhunter, and all that. But we also have some of the lesser known stuff, like we have the Losers, or we have the Challengers of the Unknown. And there's a whole bunch of different characters that are in this story that, unless you were a DC fanatic, you wouldn't even know of them. Like, when I first read this, the first volume, it starts with the Losers, this team of soldiers, and I'm like, oh, this is a really cool part of the story. It's about how they're trapped on this island with dinosaurs trying to save a team of soldiers that were trapped there. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I actually really like that part of the story. And then I'm like, wait a minute, the Losers, where have I heard that name before? Right, didn't they make a movie? Wasn't that holy shoot, the Losers are actually based off of a comic book. And these books are full of things like that, paying their respects to the DC universe and the different steps that it took along its history. This takes place in the DC universe from the time period from like 1945 to 1958. At least that was the two dates I noticed. It might be a little bit later. But, you know, it's in the 40s and the 50s and their transition into the 60s. I would say our main character is, but there is no main character in this book. There are a lot of different eyes that we're seeing this world through. I'll just talk about each of the characters and how I felt about them. My favorite of what they did in this book, my favorite version, has to be the Martian Manhunter. This is one of my favorite reads of the Martian Manhunter period. There's only like, I don't have that many things where like, I really enjoy this story of the Martian Manhunter. There's like one other story that I really like of the Martian Manhunter. This is another one of them because, okay, he's transported to our planet. He's a Martian. He has no idea, and the person who transports him has a heart attack and dies when he sees him. And so then he starts to try to adapt to Earth's culture, and he uses it through TV. And through this, it's kind of interesting because he looks at TV and uses that to defer his knowledge of human interactions in the human world. And so he decides to become a detective on this world and blend in. But a lot of the stuff he says is like old-time movie quotes and TV shows style. You know, he doesn't talk like regular people. He talks like how they do in the movies sometimes. And that's really cool, but I'm just so glad that he didn't land in our time period, because then you'd have the Martian Manhunter saying stuff like swag and YOLO, and I'd be like, ugh. One of the reasons that I love the Martian Manhunter in here, because he's made so much more of a real character than I've ever felt him as. I mean, before I've always felt him as he's just a stoic, quiet alien. Not a whole lot that I can relate to with that. But in here I find him very relatable, because we really get into the whole fish out of water stuff, and how he feels so out of place along with the rest of the world. There's a part in this story which I absolutely love, is when he goes to a theater, and it's a science fiction movie about Martians invading the Earth, and he finds it absolutely hilarious. He thinks it's a comedy because of how unrealistic they make these Martians, and he's like, are those the strings? And he's laughing his head off in the theater, and everyone's like, shh, and everyone is like super frightened and super afraid in this theater, because they're like, actually, you know, it's the time period and they're actually afraid of stuff like that. And he's just laughing his head off. I love that moment. I love moments like that. But there's other moments where you see he feels homesick, and how he doesn't really understand humanity and stuff like that. This is, as I say, these stories are my favorite versions of Martian Manhunter. My favorite stories with him in it. Because through his eyes, we get to get a new look at the DC Universe, and how he looks at the world, and how it really shapes his worldview of humans. And even how he looks at people who aren't really nice people, and how he looks at them and he sees that in the inside they're really trying to do good, and they believe that what they're doing is good, and it inspires him. I love stuff like that about this story. It really has a great handle on what it is for the Martian Manhunter to be in this world. One of the other main characters in this story is Hal Jordan. Hal goes through the whole, he doesn't have the Green Lantern ring yet, but by the end of the story he does. So we get to see him as like a pilot, and he loves to fly. We get a lot of good stuff with Hal. I guess I just like it better than Jeff Johns' Secret Origin stuff. I just think it's good here. I think Hal Jordan is a good character, and that he's really inspiring. And one thing, though, Hal Jordan has this weird thing where he says, like, this weird catchphrase. One of the things that he says in this book a lot is, "Suffering Susie!" Okay, for those who might be a lot bigger Green Lantern fans than me, is that an actual, was that an actual Green Lantern catchphrase back in the day, and that they just dropped? You know, I don't know, Luke Cage's "Sweet Christmas," you know, sort of thing. I don't know, that just "Suffering Susie," that seems like a really kind of lame catchphrase. But hey, if it's paying tribute to what the writers of Green Lantern wrote back then, that might be kind of a cool thing. But anyway, I like Hal Jordan's, how he's handled in this story, because, you know, he's really seen as the everyman that's going through. Throughout this story, there's this confrontation between capes and government. It's kind of built up throughout the whole 2 books of how the government wants to control and, you know, to hone the powers of these people who are using their superpowers, and they don't want them on the streets doing their own thing. They want to be controlled, and they've, you know, in their mind, these people with these superpowers are loose cannons, that they could do so many bad things, and in the hero's mind, they're like, we're just trying to help. And it, you know, it comes to all heading to the end where they have to put aside their differences to work together to get to this big threat. Now, the big threat is less interesting, because, okay, let me just say, the big threat is Dinosaur Island. Now, if you don't know what the Dinosaur Island is, it's kind of self-explanatory. Let's just say Dinosaur Island is like the savage land of the DC universe. You know, it's this place, just dinosaurs. That's all you really need to know about it. But in this, they made Dinosaur Island like an actual thing. Like, it lifts up the out of the ground. And it feels almost like it's part of the planet that's condemning humankind and wants to destroy it. I will say that I don't really find that interesting. I mean, it's a Silver Age thing that they are facing. It's really a Silver Age type thing that this island comes out of this ground filled with dinosaurs and tries to destroy everything. That's really part of the Silver Age style, and I like that, but I just don't find it's not an interesting villain. I actually think they made it more interesting in the animated movie because it kind of gave it a voice, and that you couldn't really do that in this. Like, the center, which was what the island's called, the center would inhabit the bodies of some people at some times and then just speak, so it gave the villain more of a presence. This one, it's just there, and it's just a big thing, and for excuse for all the heroes to get together. So, it's good, I just don't find it as interesting. Is that it has a lot of things going on, and some of it doesn't really get a payoff. I mean, we have this scene where the center is attacking everything. We go up to the outer space. We have this scene on the moon with all the magic users, from Phantom Stranger, the Spectre, Dr. Fate, Shazam, and Zatanna. They're all just like having lunch on the moon. And they're talking, but you never see him again, so they're like, should we go save them? Should we not? And I guess they said no, because they didn't do anything. That kind of also brings up one of my complaints of the story, is that in the books, Batman isn't even in the final fight. I mean, it shows Batman investigating stuff about the center and finding out about this cult, and he's really throughout the whole thing, and he's suspicious of the Martian Manhunter. He's really dark and mysterious, and at the end, he just talks to Superman, gives him this film strip, and that's the last we see of him. When all the heroes gather to fight this giant thing, Batman's not there. Now, I get that Batman isn't necessarily the type of hero that's going to face this giant island head on, but if Green Arrow is there, why the heck isn't Batman there? I mean, that's one thing you can say the movie did differently, is that they had Batman in the final fight. In fact, it was Batman in this story that takes Ray Palmer to the end, so they find out how to defeat the center. And on this story, it's Adam Strange that finds Ray Palmer. Now, you could say that if you put Batman in the final fight, it just takes Adam Strange all the way out and doesn't give it anything to do. But come on, who's a more important character in a story like this? Batman, are you given stuff to do throughout the story, or Adam Strange, who just showed up like in one panel before saying he was in an insane asylum? Okay, it's fair enough that this is a tribute to the Silver Age, and that's just one of the problems. Like, there's a whole bunch of different threads going on, and some of them just aren't, like, in the end, Batman does all this detective work on all these little files and everything, but in the end, it doesn't matter. If he didn't do any of that detective work, this center would have still risen out of the ocean, and they still would have defeated him the exact same way, so what was the point of Batman even being in the story? I'll say that it was hard for me to get into this at first, just because when you've seen the movie and then you see the book, it's hard to just drop the movie and just read it as a comic book, because your mind is thinking of how the movie was paced and how the movie was structured, and the book is taking so much longer, and then it took me about 3 times to really read it, to really appreciate the type of story it was. And I don't think that was the book's fault. I think it was just because I'd seen the movie and I don't know what I wanted to expect, but I wasn't ready for the pacing of the book compared to the pacing of the movie. Because there's a lot more things in this book that in the movie. Because, like, for example, Hal's partner, I didn't know that Hal's partner was part of the Challengers of the Unknown. When he showed up in, like, a purple shirt, I'm like, why the heck is he in a purple shirt if he's like, an Air Force officer? I didn't know that he was part of the Challengers of the Unknown. Technically, I didn't know what the Challengers of the Unknown were back then, but, you know, it explains how he's part of a group that, I believe, if I'm reading the right part of the story, they crashed in this plane crash that should have killed everyone, but these, like, 4 people survive, and then they decide to, you know, form a team and just find out things that don't belong in the world. which is interesting. It's really interesting to see. I like that there is a lot of different stuff of the Silver Age in here, and how it embraces it, and how it takes it as a time where it might have been simpler times, but it wasn't like completely clean times. Like, there are stuff that happens in here, like the beginning, how Hal has to kill a Korean soldier who's just like a teenager because he's forced to survive. And then there's stuff with this guy called John Henry, who is a black man who gets hung up by the Ku Klux Klan, but he survives, and then he goes hunting the KKK. And that part of the story, I really like that it doesn't shy away from stuff like that, of its history, of its time period, that around that time, there were no black superheroes in comic books. Why? Because racism, okay? It's that simple. And so I don't think that John Henry, maybe he was a superhero in comics. I don't actually know that, if he was or not. But I like how, if they created this guy, if they did, I like how they make him someone who's doing it to help his people, and he's hunting the KKK, and eventually he dies because of it. The KKK hunt him down, and there's this really kind of like tragic scene where they're hunting him down, and he bulls over, and he can barely move, and he's just looking at this little girl, and he's like, "Help me!" And then she calls him out, calling him the N-word. You know, it's kind of really tragic the way people were brainwashed back then into thinking certain things. But in any case, I like how it addresses stuff like that from the time period, and how he kind of, by doing that, inspires others. I like that. So Darwin Cook didn't only just write this book, but he also illustrated it, with the colorist being David Stewart. So let me just say about the art. The thing with the art is, I won't say that it's like spectacular art, but it's actually pretty good, because it's reflecting the period, the time period, because, you know, Silver Age comic books weren't necessarily the best drawn comic books. They were pretty basic. So I like that this book keeps it pretty basic, but uses a style that can lead to some really cool moments, like with all the heroes walking in the 2-page spread. You also have one of my favorite moments that was from the movie, was the point when Wonder Woman's flying her invisible jet, but she's bleeding, and so all you see is her flying with blood all over the inside of the jet. I like that moment. It does bother me a little bit that while there is a ton of blood on the inside of the jet, there is no blood on Diana. Like, there's no scars with blood coming out of it. Like, maybe it's not her blood or something, but it really looked like that was the method it was supposed to use. That she was bleeding out into this thing. But there's no bloody scars or anything all over her. Maybe she's healed up by the time. I don't know how fast Wonder Woman's regeneration period is. But, you know, there's just scratches on her, but no blood coming out of her. I think you could have gone the little extra mile there, guys. But in any case, it's supposed to convey a feel of the Silver Age while having a drawing style that is still modern. So it's not like it's lowering its art quality. It's using its art quality to pay homage to the Silver Age drawing style, but still keep it modern and new, and so you can have some pretty impressive shots. One of my complaints with this book, one big one. Why does everyone hate Captain Cold except for Jeff Johns? Seriously. I mean, Captain Cold in this story, he's just like, he's a guy, he has all these chicks, and he has all these bling on his fingers, and he's robbing things, and he's bald, and he looks like a doofus, and Flash takes him out easily, and I'm just like, no. Well, you guys might wonder, why are you so upset over Captain Cold? It's very, very simple, guys. Captain Cold is my favorite Flash villain because of one of my favorite comic book stories of all time is The Rogue's Revenge. In my mind, it's the best thing that came out of the Final Crisis part. It was absolutely amazing. The Rogue's Revenge, to me, is one of the greatest comic book stories that I've ever read. And you might ask, well, what's it about? It's basically just Captain Cold and the Rogues wanting to take revenge on this speedster called Hernia. That's it. And the sheer cool and tragic nature of Captain Cold comes out in that story. And so I love him. I love him for that so much. But we're reviewing New Frontier, not Rogue's Revenge. But my point is, it always bothers me when I see Captain Cold, in whether it be an animated TV show or a comic book, where he's treated like a joke, and he's treated like a joke again, and I hate that. He's a really cool character. Write him right. Ugh, and it didn't get any better than when they gave him superpowers. Captain Cold should not have... Okay, this is a whole nother rant. I'm just saying Captain Cold should not have superpowers, and none of the rogues... Well, I shouldn't say none of the rogues. The rogues that have powers should have powers, but not Captain Cold. He was much better without it. It made more sense than he could... Never mind. I'm done. No more ranting about Captain Cold. I just didn't like the way he was handled in this book. One of the things that's kind of interesting is that when they talk about the excuse that was used to get the DC superheroes out of World War II, why the DC superheroes didn't fight in World War II... Because let's put it this way. Why would on earth would the Nazis fight America if Superman could just go up there and, you know, like that comic book where Superman just goes and takes Hitler and Stalin and defeats them in about 5 minutes? They say in here that Hitler had this thing called the Destiny Spear that kept all the superheroes out of the war. That's a very specific thing. I mean, just like... does it have like one wish? Wouldn't his one wish would be that I'd win the war? I don't know how it works, but maybe the spear said you could keep these... but how did that work? Were they just like... Was Superman just like, wow, I think I'll go and whoop. Join the whoop. I can't enter the recruitment office. Well, I'll just fly to Germany and... I can't go past the border. In fact, I can't go out of America. Well, that sucks. Guess I'm not going to war. I was just wondering how did that work, but it's a one line, and I wish it had a little bit more explanation. But I don't know. To me, that just it just gave me a picture of Hitler with a spear going, "Name no more superheroes in war." One of the things that I will say is bothersome with this is it's not clear all the time which way the panels are supposed to be arranged. You know, comic books, they fluctuate sometimes. Sometimes you're supposed to just read it on this one page and then go to the next page. Sometimes comics read it as you read this page, then you read the next part on this page, and then you continue downward, like this. I think that there are some times in this where I'm reading it like this, and I'm halfway to the bottom, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be reading it just like up and down. So, I'm confused a lot of the times. I guess I shouldn't be, because I don't know if this is true, but maybe the whole point was be a true-to-form comic book style where you're only reading one page at a time. Because, you know, back in the day, comics didn't have the 2-page panel stuff. So maybe it was all of them just on one page, but there were a couple of times where I was confused on what a character was saying. Like, wait a minute, what are you talking about now? Oh, wait, down there, okay. I will say that this book has equally parts excitement, tribute, humor, and just all-around good superhero comic. This is really good. I mean, it's... You could say, truthfully, that this story is all over the place. And, yeah, it is, but that's the point of this story. It's supposed to be all over the place to show you the different places of the DC Universe and pay tribute to each and every one. But while also giving these classic superheroes in this old time period a more, I don't want to say adult, but a more, and I don't want to say modern, the word I'm looking for is a more serious twist. Not to the point where it's dark and brooding all the time, it's super just dark. It's still lighthearted for the times, but it doesn't shy away from the problems that were around at that time. You know, people calling Flash a communist because he wore a red uniform, or the racism that was going on with the Ku Klux Klan and how John Henry was trying to stop it and died because of it. Different stuff like that were really, really good about this story. It's all over the place, but in the perfect way. The way that really gets you to love and appreciate the DC Universe even more. So thanks for watching, everyone, and thank you for Connor Spencer N for making my Arkham Week banner. I hope you like your reward. So, I am giving DC New Frontier Volume 1 and 2, I'm going to rate them together, 8.5 out of 10. Really good read, definitely a book for anyone who wants to get deeper into the universe of DC and to really embrace their history of what they had back then and what the stories were like, while also giving it a little more serious take on it, but a really good look of all these characters and a great story for Martian Manhunter. It's a really good read. I recommend it to everyone. So, remember guys, I'm LazyDude99, and if I don't like it, it's not worth it. See you around.
Be sure to check out more of my other videos on my channel, and wait for more coming soon.